What's up, family? Today's episode is brought to you by Noah's Beard Oils. They are a dear friend of mine. I have my audio going, sorry. But Noah's Beard Oils, if you go to Instagram.com/Noah's Beard Oils, I have one here. Where is it at? So if you want to keep stuff looking fresh. Now, ladies, obviously, if you don't have a beard, you don't want to use it, but that's a bad joke. Yeah, Noah's Beard Oils. We actually met on a live stream platform years ago. Well, I didn't meet him organically, but we are a part of a few other startup projects together with Noah. But anyways, Noah's Beard Oils, keeping your beard. I don't have a thick, full beard, but I have what I've got. And pull my mic down. So you got to work with what you got. And if you go to Instagram.com/Noah's Beard Oils, definitely get your hands on that. And promo code will be GLO808. You get free shipping off your entire order. And that's pretty much it. It's been a minute. We are live on YouTube, Twitch, Kick, and Rumble, as well as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Pandora. We'll be live and down the tape delay and every other podcast outlet out there. And we're on X as well. So I got a little lineup. Today's title it's kind of a funny one. I had to look it up because I used to love this guy named Chris Farley. For anybody that doesn't know Chris Farley, he's a comedian that was birthed out of, well, I don't say he's birthed out of, but he was one of the old Saturday Night Live crew back in the day. And so he had this saying, I'm living alone in a van down by the river. And I thought it was a funny skit. But anyways, it led me to today's subject material. We're going to talk about not living in a van down by the river, but fresh water, lakes, rivers. And I promise you, I'll keep it scriptural. There'll be a scriptural reference as we move forward. But I will say this, that everything that I talk about today and every other podcast I've ever done, it all funnels into something I'm believing that's of historical importance. That's always been my passion. So anyways, for those of you that don't know this, a little factoid before we go live, I'm scared of water or fresh water. Scared of lakes, scared of rivers. I don't like it. I'm a native Hawaiian, born basically in an ocean, a tiny little rock in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And I don't like fresh water. I don't like the fact that you can't see what's, beneath you. I don't like that. I don't like that feeling. So anyways, we'll talk about that. And I love the ocean. I love being able to, I don't care if there's sharks, because there's sharks everywhere. I just don't like lakes and rivers and all that. But I promise you, by the time we're done today, it's all going to make sense. So we'll be back in 46 seconds. We're going to connect the dots. When we come back, you are watching us live, Glow Sessions live, in a van down by the river. Man, when I was a kid, I used to, there's this park on the Big Island of Hawaii. For anybody that's been to Hawaii on the Big Island, so Big Island is, it's literally the biggest island. I think it's like 5,000 square miles. I think Oahu is like 500 square miles. So the Big Island is 5,000. So you can see the reference in size. But anyways, as a kid, I used to love this park called Spencer Park. And Spencer Park, my grandfather used to be the caretaker of this park. My grandfather, Joseph Hui, I believe he was full-blooded Hawaiian, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure, because my Auntie Alicia's got quite a bit too. I think she's 75%. The reason why that's important, for anybody that's wondering, like the blood quantum, is very important. And especially when it comes to I almost said land ownership. it's not technically land ownership, but anyways, that's another discussion for another time. So anyways, my grandfather used to be the caretaker of this park called Spencer Park. And Spencer Park had the best sand. Like, and that sand was like smooth. It was like lotion, man. It was like lotion with exfoliants. You know, and it was like, wow, this is beautiful. But anyways, I used to love this beach because the waves were tiny. You know, as a kid, I guess you say baby. I don't know. Do you guys remember when you were a baby? I don't know if I can say I remember being a baby, but I don't know. It's weird memories. I don't want to be like Terrence Howard. Terrence Howard says he remembers being in the womb, so that's kind of weird. But anyways, this beach. The reason why I loved it is because the sand was perfect. You made the perfect sand castles. The waves were tiny. And I loved it. Now there's this other beach a few hours down the road called Hapuna. And Hapuna Beach was same type of sand almost. A lot of people like to bodyboard and surf over there. But my auntie would always tell me, don't you go out too far because it drops off. Like the sand just drops. It's like a literal like cliff, like underwater cliff. And so my auntie would always tell us, don't go too far because you're gonna fall and you're gonna get sucked out. I think that's the word she would use. You would get sucked out. And I'm like, man, I used to be terrified of that. You know, as a kid, I don't know if they told us the truth. You know, I don't know if my auntie and my grandpa used to tell me, hey, watch out for the boogeyman. The boogeyman. He used to always say, the boogeyman will get you. That's what my grandpa would say. And he would tell me that so I wouldn't, you know, I guess be ne'ele or like run off and do things I'm not supposed to. So he used to always tell me, hey, no go over there because the boogeyman gonna get you. He's always telling me that. And I used to actually believe the boogeyman was a real person. Now that I'm older and I'm a parent and my wife and I, you know, we are in ministry and the boogeyman is real. He just had a different name. You know, he has different names. But I'm talking about the devil, if anybody's wondering. So, anyways, where was I going with this? Talking about the water. So yeah, Hapuna Beach was one of my favorite beaches. But it was just one of those where I'd be scared. And Spencer Park was by far my most favorite. But all that goes to this one place. If anybody watched the movie Waterworld with Kevin Costner, so there was this boat harbor where Kevin Costner filmed a movie called Waterworld, and that's where they would move this whole city, like a city boat, I guess you could say, and they would bring it into the port, and it's called Kauai or Kauai. I would say Kauai. We always say Kauai Boat Harbor, and they would bring it in. And then it would take it out again. Like they would shoot for like whatever, 15, 16 hours a day. They would shoot the movie. Well, that boat harbor, man, my auntie used to take us to swim in this boat harbor. But you can't make this stuff up, I'm telling you. This was like a shipyard, okay? We would go swimming in a shipyard, okay? The water is so deep. Because these boats would come in. I don't know the whole history. I just know that back in the day, I know they had shipping there. I think I remember the one time we were there was this Navy ship that came through, and they were honking the horn at us because we were swimming in their way. We were literally in the path. Can you imagine a bunch of little kids swimming in a boat harbor, and there's this Navy ship coming? Tell you what, man. So, anyways, I'm bringing all that up because I remember we would jump off of this buoy, or I guess you call it, it's like a big concrete. It's where the ships would tie off on in the middle of the harbor, and they'll tie their ship off to it. It was surrounded by a bunch of rubber tires or whatever it was. And we used to climb to the top. And then we would jump off and we would dive. And but I remember we had to go swim back to the actual harbor. And Well, if you guys don't believe me, I promise you, one day I'm gonna do a podcast with my Auntie Alicia. We're gonna call her out live. Okay, she doesn't like to do live, so we may do pre-recorded. But anyways, she should take us out there. So, anyways, man, it took a long time to make this point. Swimming back to the actual harbor itself, the dock, I would look down, and I would have these goggles. But you could see everything. Like you would see fish. I don't know if I saw a shark, but you would see all kinds of stuff. And it was a very surreal experience, especially as a kid. And brother Waylon in the house, good to see you, brother. And so, and I remember there's this one time where we swam back to the dock, and we had to climb on this ladder. And on the ladder there was this. You know, it's made out of steel, right? So there's all this growth of barnacles, and there's coral on the walls because it was concrete. And there's tons of vana. In Hawaii, we would say vana. And so vana is sea urchin. And these were they were the black ones, and they had very long spikes. And I remember a few times I stepped on a few, and not really hard, but enough to, and you're like, you sit down on the ground, and you got to take the spikes out of your. It's really sore. And I remember my Auntie Alicia. I don't even know if this is true, but we would have to make shishi. We say shishi, which is we would urinate, on ourselves to disinfect the wound. And I don't know if that works, family. I really don't know. But looking back, it felt good. It felt good. It felt soothing, I don't know if that's why they told us. I don't know. I gotta go research that. But anyways, but that's the ocean, right? That's the ocean in Hawaii. That's, that is what, how should I put it? That was what I grew up with. That's what I knew. As terrifying as that would be today, because what I found out later was a lot of sharks, most of the sharks that we know of they're not predatory. Like that's not their primary instinct is to prey on living things. They would rather scavenge. It's easier for them, although they're very good predators. So they do stalk, but if they can get a free meal, they'd rather do that. So now that I think about it, man, how many sharks were at the bottom of that harbor, just waiting, just like, probably debating. They're probably like looking at all those kids and like, man, just like that movie Jaws. And I always wonder, like, man, are they gonna? I was thinking, man, am I gonna get bit today? But anyway, so that was the water, that was the ocean, and I'll drop a scripture. So, I always try to drop obviously a lot of scriptures and bring it to a heavy scripture base. But one of the things I read about, and one of the things I didn't really preach a lot about rivers, but definitely rivers are something that represents overflow, refreshing, right? And where the rivers flow, things grow. Wow, that sounds good. Where the rivers flow, things grow. So I will say that it's interesting today. I'm going to talk about rivers. I'm going to talk about water and all those things. And my inherent fear of fresh water is not necessarily the water in itself, right? It's what you can't see in the water, right? Ezekiel 47 is 47:9. It talks about where the water flows. There's even a reference where there's swarm of life that surrounds rivers, and the rivers are flowing with obviously fish and wildlife surround, and wherever it flows, things grow. And this Hawaiian, I will tell you this much: this Hawaiian, that's hard for me to believe when I get into a lake. I think it was actually, before I talk about this lake, I do want to talk about something that I heard. This is going to be a tough dot for me to connect, but I was listening to a podcast yesterday about nuclear nuclear power or nuclear energy. This is going to be a tough dot. I'll connect this dot, I promise. So the discussion was with Oliver Stone. He was talking about a documentary that he did in regards to nuclear energy. And he talked about how efficient it is and how much cleaner it is than your traditional, your coal, the coal mines, and all that. And when I was listening to it, there's a statement that they made was, there are so many things in our life that are dangerous, but we're not afraid of them. And a lot of times it's not because we don't have knowledge of it. It's because we trust that it's going to be okay. And I totally butchered that probably as far as how he said it. I'll find Nicole and I'll put it up on my social media. And the point of reference was in the era of nuclear energy, right? I think there's 50 something. It's either 50 or 60 power plant. I think it's 50 something. I think there's like 50. Let me ask the Google real quick. Hey, Google, how many nuclear power plants are in the United States?
I don't know the answer to that specific question, but according to Statista.com, Illinois is also the state with the largest number of nuclear power reactors in operation in the U.S. This state of the northern Midwest had 11
Okay, Google.
reactors in...
Stop. So there's 54. Actually, I saw it on my... So there's 54, I think. Let's just say 50. There's 50 nuclear power plants. Nuclear power. What is it called? Nuclear power? I don't even know. So anyways, so there's over 50 nuclear power plants in the United States. And there's just fear about them, right? I grew up in the 80s, so we all seen the movie Red Dawn. We've seen all the movies where you're going to get radiation and everything's just going to blow up and it's going to be end of the... We all seen Terminator, right? Where the AI launched a bunch of nuclear missiles. So we all saw those movies, right? So going back to this nuclear power plants, it reminded me when I was a kid. So part of my life as a child, I lived in Hawaii, and about 7 or 8, I think 7 years. Man, as I get older, I forget how many years it's been. And by the way, good to see you, Beth, out there on Twitter, on the X. So I lived in Hawaii and in South Carolina as a kid for a few years. Now in South Carolina, I was able to go to a nuclear power plant. And I'll never forget, man, how crazy that was. I remember even as a kid, we had to sign these forms. I don't know what they were. I remember we had to sign these papers as a kid. And then our parents have to sign it. And then we give it to our teacher. And I guess every field trip you have it, I think. But anyways, I have a feeling that it was more than just I gave my child permission, because it seemed like a lot of paperwork. And I might be making this up. But anyways, we go to this nuclear power plant. And I remember just how big it is. And I know everything's big to you as a child. But we went through this power plant. We had to go through a couple of security checkpoints. And there's a couple of like offices we had to walk through. And then they walked us through this nuclear power plant. Now, we didn't go into the actual reactor, but there's this huge window. And they let us, and there's a window, if I remember correctly, and there's another window, there's like a lab, and then we could see the structure of what they said was the power plant, where the electricity came from. And they showed us, and they explained to us how everything was, the heat, and they said how clean it was, and how safe it was, and how much electricity it produced. And so, man, how old am I? Wow, 40 years. Almost 40 years later. Actually, about 30-something years later, now I remember, as I'm hearing this podcast with Oliver Stone talking about nuclear energy and how there's this fear of the nuclear energy. And how there's so many misconceptions and there's so much deception around it for whatever reason. And it just it reminded me when I went to that nuclear power plant. They talked about how many years, I think it's like 100 years it would take for the cores that they had, the uranium, I forget what it's called. I think it's uranium. And they had these rods. And once they were done with them, they would stick them in these pools, basically, underground. And they would stay there for about 100 years. And I thought that was pretty cool. I really thought, like, wow, this energy is going to be powering these cities. And then when they're done, it's going to sit in this like underground concrete swimming pool. And I remember they said that the concrete that they put it in, it'll help cool off and keep the radiation from, escaping, right? So I say all that because around that time in my life, I had my very first experience in a lake. And this lake was Lake Norman. This was actually North Carolina. And I remember swimming in, check this out, bro. You guys, I'm going to trip out just talking about it. I remember swimming in this lake. So my dad then had these friends, they had these boats, right? So these boats were like these flat, these pontoons. Lori Harrell. So we're all old now. So anyways, I remember Lori Harrell and her dad, their family. We spent a good part of our, I don't want to say summer. I think we stayed here for a few days. Can't remember. It's been so long ago. Anyways, they had a lake house on Lake Norman. And I remember swimming and I was terrified. Like my first time jumping in that water, I had never seen brown water before. Now, maybe I didn't even know brown water existed until then. And I remember people just jumping in like nothing. I'm sitting there like, man, what in the world is going on? Why are these people jumping in this? Because I used to watch these horror movies, right? Where I think it was the alligator one. I forget what it was called. But it was always in murky water. So in Hawaii, we always knew that you'd never swim in murky water. You don't do it. I know earlier I talked about sharks. They don't really like to prey on, Now they are predatory animals and they will go for the easier meal first. One of the easy ways to get a meal if you're a shark is to do it in murky water. Sharks don't typically have good eyesight, but they can smell and they can sense. They can have this amazing sonar and they can sense when something seems to be disoriented or flailing. Typically in murky water, most fish are not, they don't do very well in murky water. So that's where sharks like to prey. So anyways, so in Hawaii, we knew we don't swim in murky water. So here I am, a kid in North Carolina, about to jump in this murky upon murky water, this brown water. And I remember jumping in and I'm like, my heart was pounding, bro. Like literally like I remember just like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, man. And I remember, I was a good swimmer. I just remember swimming. Everybody had life vests. I'm thinking, why does everybody have all these bubble things around them? Or, here with me and my dad, were swimming. And just swimming. And I really hope nothing bites my feet or bites my fingers. And I was just terrified. I didn't like it. Didn't like it one bit. It felt good because it was hot. It was like 90 something degrees. But I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. It's just so getting out of the water. I remember this, my first day, the first day of swimming in a lake. I remember changing my clothes. I'll never forget this. This is the memory for the ages, bro. My underwear was like brownish orange, but it was brownish orange. And what I found out was that brownish orange was from the I was about to say ocean, from the lake. So all that muddy water, all that mud and soot, whatever you want to call it, basically my underwear filtered it all. And it really, it's a good reminder for me that all the fears that I had up until that point, and then it was for nothing. You know, it was for nothing. There's nothing that's going to bite me. There's no sharks. There might have been snakes, but not really. I think snake bites and attacks are as rare as shark attacks, I believe. Let me talk to the Google. Let me ask Siri. Siri can answer. Let's see. Hey Siri. Well, let's do this. Hey Siri. How many snake attacks are there every year in the United States? Okay, I take that back. According to Siri, there's 45,000 snake bites a year in the United States, with about 8,000 of them being venomous. So the fatalities is a lot less, which is 10. Okay, so here's the contrast. Check this out. Hey Siri, how many shark attacks are there every year in the United States? So in the United States, there's about 16 shark attacks per year in the United States, with one fatality every 2 years. So check this out. Hey Siri, how many shark attacks are there in Hawaii every year? That number seems kind of low, but it says about 3 to 4. I think it's higher than that. I think sometimes Siri doesn't have. I'm not mad at you, Siri. I'm just saying, Siri is very emotional, and my Siri is a dude. So, anyways, where was I going with this? The idea that I was so afraid to swim in this lake. It was just. It really wasn't a fear based on fact. You know what I mean? It was kind of like, how should I put it? Unfounded? That's not the word. So anyways, after that week we spent in North Carolina, to this day I'm still terrified. I still, even though the fears are not, you know, I still don't like it. I don't like it one bit. And I found out later, here's the funny part to this. One of our my dad's friend, one of our friends, he was a diver, a scuba diver. And so he actually lived on the lake. And he, I don't know the whole story. I just know he was a scuba diver and he did maintenance on the dam. And so they would clean out all of the, the drainage parts of the dam. And he told us there was one time a diver had went down to clean out. There's something blocking. So they turned off all the pumps or whatever. And this dam is huge now. He swam back up, terrified. He saw a catfish. He said the catfish was about the size of a Volkswagen. And I was like, dude, that's huge. So a Volkswagen, like Volkswagen Beetle. That's not too big in the sense of like ocean fish or whatever. But in a lake, catfish, as big as a Volkswagen, and you can't see him coming, he's in the brown water. No, thank you. No, thank you. So my fear of fresh water, there is some good reason for that, I will say that there's some good reason for it. And now that I'm pushing 50 and I look back, I'm like, there's so many things in my life that I've been blessed to see or be a part of, and we lived in multiple places. A lot of people ask me, are you military? No. So obviously I'm born and raised Hawaii, but as a kid, had an opportunity to live in the East Coast for a few years with my family. My mom and dad gave up the corporate life, and they decided to become pastors. So they went to school of what other better place than the Bible Belt. For those of you that live in the South, you know what I'm talking about. Everything's closed on Sundays. Nothing's. Oh, I'll take that back. Back then, things would open after 1 o'clock, and then they would close again at 6. So, which is so weird. Or 8 o'clock. I forget what time. So yeah, my parents. So we live in the South. So I've been blessed to live in multiple places, and culturally, it was great. For me, it was great. But I found that some of the fears that I had as a child and even carried through as an adult just wasn't worth carrying, right? And I will say, now that I have kids, walking them through some of these things, my youngest son's a great example. There's some fears that he carries, and I'm learning as a parent how to walk him through that. And I'm going to take a quick 42-second from one of my brand partners, and I'm going to do a refresh. I'm going to fill up my beverage and then clear some sinus if I have to. I'll be right back in 42 seconds from Noah's Beard Oils. Today's episode is brought to you by Noah's Beard Oils. For those of you that are trying to grow out your Fu Manchu like myself, or you're doing that whole Sasquatch Pacific Northwest look, well, go to Instagram.com/Noah's Beard Oils. Everything you need to moisturize and also just to freshen up. I have 2 bottles myself. I have a bottle of Fresh and also a bottle of Calm. So if you want to look good, go to Instagram.com/Noah's Beard Oils. They accept Cash App and other types of payments. Don't forget to use my promo code GLO808 for free shipping off your entire order. And by the way, Noah is like 6'8". He's a former semi-pro basketball player. So thank you, Noah. Appreciate you. So yeah, going back to the the lakes and the rivers. Yes, I think it was yesterday. Yesterday, I was driving through Bend, Oregon, and I seen tons of people like in the river. So in Bend, Oregon, there's the Deschutes River, where all that water, it all comes off the mountain from snow melt, from the glacier, actually glacier melt, snow and glaciers. And I'm still amazed that people will spend all day in a river and never swim in it. It boggles my mind how someone can be in the river all day and not swim in it. Yeah, it's weird. It's just weird. I don't know how people, I really don't know. It's weird. I'm sure some do, but for the most part, maybe I don't know if it's a culture thing. Maybe somebody can answer that for me, but I don't know if it's a culture thing. But anyways, yeah, I've seen a lot of people in the river just they're in an inner tube and their butt is in the water for 2-3 hours at a time. And of course they're probably drinking and they're probably eating tacos, whatever they're doing. There's so many taco trucks here. It's crazy. So yeah, and I seen people doing that, and I'm thinking, man, just go in the water. It's great. Water's beautiful, and so it reminded me of the time when I went to Montana. I think it was first we went to Missoula. We visited a friend in Montana, my friend Steve. Not Scuba Steve, but so we met Steve in Hawaii, and we used to do these Bible studies with Steve at the Windward Mall in Kaneohe. And we used to have these Bible studies, I think on Thursday nights, sometimes Tuesdays, and we just have a bunch of people. We meet at the mall and we do Bible studies. And Steve was one of them, and my friend Brendan and his wife, I think his wife Chrissy, girlfriend at the time, they would come out once in a while. We had a few other people that would come, and it was great. So Steve, we met in Hawaii. So when we went to his wedding in Montana, he told us, "Hey, we're gonna do some floating." And I'm thinking, what in the world is floating? And I was like, okay, whatever. So we went to this river. I forget what river. It was cold. He said the water's a little bit cold. I said, well, like he said, well, it's not cold for me. So he said the water feels great. So I'm like, well, what's the temperature? He said it's about 55. I'm like, 55? Like, what in the world? Why is the water so cold? And so we pumped up we had stand-up paddle boards. Here's the ironic thing. I'm a great swimmer. Obviously, my dad taught me how to swim. My dad, surf, bodyboard, fishing or diving, spearfishing. And so me in a river in Montana, like I didn't put on a what do you call that? Those life vests. I probably should have put it on. I can't remember. I know it's the law in some places, but I think I took it off. I just didn't like the way it felt. And maybe I had it on. I gotta go look at the pictures. So I learned how to stand up paddleboard in Montana, and then my friend Steve learned how to stand up paddleboard in Hawaii, which is so ironic. So the Montana guy learns in Hawaii, and the Hawaii guy learns how to stand up paddle in Montana, which is so funny. So we floated down this river, man. It's fresh water, and would you know that the water was crystal clear. Crystal clear. You could see fish, like we could see trout. I don't think I've seen salmon, and we saw crawfish, and I'm like, wow, this is beautiful. And all the fears I had of, from a kid, looking at the fresh water, I'm like, man, this is great. Now the water was cold. I will say the water was chilly, but it reminded me of just how refreshing if you just jump in. And I actually fell in a couple times, and my wife fell in a few times too. And that part was a little bit stressful because as you're floating down the river on a stand-up paddleboard and you fall in, you don't want to lose your board because then it's going to go God knows where. So, and the river was flowing pretty, not fast, but it was fast enough. And there were some spots where Steve told us, don't go this way because that's where people have died going this way just because of the rapids. And so that was a healthy dose of fear, I will say. And so here's the question I'll ask, for anybody that's watching. Have you ever done something that it was, potentially life-threatening and it potentially can kill you, right? And you still did it anyway, right? I think a lot of us obviously have. If you've ever driven a car, that's potentially life-threatening, right? A lot of people are scared to fly airplanes. A lot. I actually know a few people that would not fly in it. To this day, they won't fly in it. They'll drive everywhere. And I think it's one of the reasons why they haven't been to Hawaii. It's because they don't want to, get in a plane. And to get in a boat, no, I think that's probably worse for them. So, but yeah, how many of you guys have done something that you were afraid to do, or maybe even though you look at the risk factor, more people die in car crashes than airplanes every year, right? More people die of like health issues, can be whatever, heart disease, cancer, than some of the other things we're afraid of. If we believe in Siri, then there's only 10 deaths in relation to our population. Just pretty amazing. I think your odds increase if you go into water. I think that's why the numbers are so low. A lot of people may go to the beach, but not a lot of them go into water. I guess it's a weird thing. Yeah. Speaking of beaches, I've got quite a bit of stories, and for the sake of staying on point, I do have a final point of this. I promise you. My dad, I think I'll share this story about my dad. But Dad used to do a lot of spearfishing when he was younger. If you never met my dad, he doesn't have fingers. He's got like little nubbies. Like he literally doesn't have fingers. He's got like little. It almost looks like little popcorn. And I'm not making fun of my dad, but it's like, I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like how would you say it? If you got Play-Doh and you roll it up into a ball, and you made like 3 or 4 Play-Doh balls, and you put it on your hands and made fingers. That's what my dad's fingers look like. And the funny thing about these hands is that they look like little Play-Doh balls, but they also look very muscular. So, anyways, I don't know why I said all that. My dad is a great swimmer. He was on a swim team in high school. Could be because he had natural webbing, the natural webbing with his hands. But great fisherman. So, anyway, this story, I'll share this story about my dad. It was I don't remember this because I was a baby, but he was telling us a story about they were fishing somewhere near Kona, and there was just tide pools. So me and my mom were sitting, eating like spam musubis or whatever it was eating, and then my brother was, I think he was just playing in the water. And my dad was yelling. He was saying, Yvonne, I got it. I got him. And my dad had this spear in this tide pool. It's kind of shallow. And my dad, he tried to stab his eel. Well, he missed. I think he missed where he hit it and the thing got mad. So he hit the eel and the eel started shaking his spear and the thing broke loose from the spear. And the eel swam like, 20, 30 feet that way. And then my dad saw that it had nowhere to go. He turned around and started charging towards my dad, and just water's just erupting, right? And the water's just splashing everywhere, and the eel was coming towards my dad. And my dad, you ever seen my dad? So my dad's short, okay? He was standing on these two rocks on a reef, and it's the only way out for the eel. And my dad, I don't know how much of the story is true, but it's a funny story. But I know it's true. I just don't know how high my dad makes like he jumped, like 5 feet up in the air. I don't think my dad jumped up. I find that hard to believe. So my dad said the eel came charging toward him with his mouth, just chomping away and coming between his legs. So of course my dad's freaking out. My dad said he jumped up, he did this gymnast split, and the eel just chomped right by him, swam right by him. And then, so anyways, that was my dad's famous eel story. And I got a few stories like that, but not with the eel, with the barracudas. And to connect the dot on this story, that eel represents a lot of things in our life, right? Where we enter the waters, and we just don't know what's out there. We don't know what's in there, but yet we go anyway. And I think that eel is a great and it was a white eel, by the way. Today's episode is brought to you by Noah's Beard Oils. What the heck? I'm so sorry I pushed that button by accident. So, what the heck? So, where was I? I blindsided myself. So, that the eel, the white eel is it's good eating. So, yeah, I don't know what he said. It was a moray eel, but I don't know if it was a moray eel. And anyway, so that eel represents a lot of things in our life, where there's a lot of unknowns. There's some things that are just kind of like lurking in the shadows, if you will, right? And yet we still enter the water. I'll share this story. I think I had 4 or 5 stories, but I want to share this story about when I was, I think, 18 or 19. I used to do a lot of spearfishing when I was a lot younger. I used to love spearfishing. I used to love the thrill of the hunt, the thrill of like stalking the fish, and one of the general rules we had for us was whatever you catch, you eat, right? So when we're in the water, we're like, man, I hope we catch something because I'm hungry, right? And so I remember there's been a few times where we went fishing, and sometimes you find a good spot, sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's a great spot, sometimes it's just a bad spot. And I remember we this one spot called Cement City. Never forget this spot. So much fish. And there was, I forget, there was like 10 of us. So all of my family, and we would go fishing at nighttime, and one of the great spots. I'm going to come back to that Cement City because I want to share this one story. I won't say who it was, but I had a good friend of ours. We went another spot called Ka'ava. And for those that don't know where Ka'ava is, that's where Jurassic Park. So all the Jurassic Park movies, Mighty Joe Young, Lost, was all filmed in this community. And the fishing spot was nice because the water is like, I don't know, 5 feet deep, maybe. 5 feet. So most of the spots would be about 5 feet deep. So the good thing about spearfishing and night diving in shallow waters is that if you get tired, you can just stand up. You can stand up on, find like a reef to stand on. And the currents aren't really strong. Now, depending on what time of the night, when the water starts coming in, it can kind of pull you a little bit. And I can't remember how many of us were there that night. I want to say there was like probably 4 maybe or 6 of us. And we would go at nighttime. Well, I remember I was with one of my buddies, and I remember seeing this mask, and you can hear kind of like struggle. And I remember looking up, and I seen his mask floating, and I looked at him. He was just kind of like not scratching himself, but trying to pull something off of him, and he got stung by a jellyfish. Some of you that, if you've been following me on social media, you know who I'm talking about. I won't say it, but I didn't get permission to use his name, so I don't want to use it. But if you know me, if you know him, and we probably shared this story before, and I just remember, oh my God, are you okay? I'm like, man, I felt bad because I know what it sucks. It really does suck to get stung by a jellyfish. For anybody that's been with me on X, on Twitter, when I would do a lot of live streams on Periscope, I've been stung live at least 10 times when I was live, and then another 20, 30 times, 30, 40 times, obviously, just throughout my lifetime. And so I know it doesn't feel good. But I will say, most surfers or people that are fishermen, once you get stung, you deal with it and you just stay out there. Because sometimes, to be very like realistic, when you look back at shore and you're like, man, I don't want to go all the way back. So you just try to tough it out. And sometimes you just can't. Sometimes it hurts a lot. And you just like, I'm done. I'm done. There've been a few times where I'm like, man, I'm done. But not when I was night diving, but like if I'm like bodyboarding or body surfing and you get stung, oh man, I'm done. I'm gonna just sit on the beach for a minute. So yeah, that particular night diving experience was unique because we were in the dark. We're diving at nighttime. And to go back to the Cement City in Haleiwa, where there's a lot of fish, I remember the first time ever going diving at nighttime with our spear. So let me paint a picture for you on how we go spearfishing at nighttime with family. I'm debating how much of this story I'm going to tell you. I'll tell you this part. So as a family, all the newcomers, if you don't have a dive, so most flashlights, they how can I do this picture? So if this is a flashlight, you got your batteries in the back, right? The battery pack. Most flashlights are not waterproof. So to have an expensive flashlight to go diving, they're all sealed and you got to tighten them a certain way. There's a bunch of like clamps, and some of us couldn't afford diving flashlights. So the people that couldn't afford them, we would put like a Duracell flashlight. We stick it in a bunch of Ziploc bags. And my dad was one of those people. So my dad, I remember one time, and me too, because it happened to me. We had a flashlight. So we're diving with our flashlights at night. Usually we go about midnight. It's when, it's just maybe not midnight. I think we go like maybe 9 o'clock. We from 9 to 12 maybe. So we got our flashlight. We got our mask. We have our spear. And then we have our fins. And sometimes some of us couldn't afford fins, so we would share. So you get one fin, I get one fin, okay? But I'm not making this up. This is crazy. Now I'm thinking about it, that was crazy. So in the dark, flashlight wrapped up in a Ziploc bag, my mask, spear, and one fin. And we're going fishing. Bruh, telling you. That's the struggle bus right there. Well, there's a few times when my dad, he was trying to shoot this one fish, and he drops his flashlight. And the flashlight drops probably 6 feet or so, maybe 5-6 feet. I just remember laughing, like, man, you got to go get it. You can't just leave it down there, right? So, happened to me too. And the scary part is you're diving down to get your flashlight, but you can't see. All you can see is this tiny little light at the bottom of the ocean floor. You got to dive down to get your flashlight. And while you're diving down, all you can think about is what is looking at me while I'm going down to get my flashlight. You're like, bro, this is scary. This is scary, bro. Right? And while you're diving down, you hear this beep, 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 beep. And you're just like, and if you got a snorkel, now if you don't have a snorkel, you hear bubble, you're like, and so whatever makes sound under the water, it seems to be louder, right? So that was my watch, the beeping. I just remember you're looking around. You're like, oh my God, what's happening? Because everything seems loud. So anyways, getting your flashlight and you're like, okay, that was good. And then when you catch some fish, when you shoot some fish, you're like, okay, it was all worth it. It was all worth it. Because we're going to eat tonight. We're going to eat tomorrow. And I was like, yeah, it was all worth it. Chris Farley had a great sketch. And it was about a motivational speaker. And he had this famous quote where if you don't want to be like me, living in a van down by the river. And I thought that was funny. And at first I didn't, I never really put thought into it, honestly, until today. Because I had to look it up. I'm like, okay, if I'm going to use this in my title. In a van down by the river. So the sketch was on Saturday Night Live, where he was brought in as a motivational speaker. That saying is kind of like a cautionary tale. And that cautionary tale is a reminder of not necessarily, I guess you could say, a failed life, but also a life that's not fulfilling. And so we're going to land this plane in about 10 minutes. But before we do that, I'm going to play one more. I'm going to bring another ad from one of our brand partners from National Center of Counseling Services and Training. We'll be back in about a minute and 10 seconds. Studies on human nature dictate that the mind always desires to improve upon the situation that you are in. For some, it could be mitigating anxiety symptoms, while for others, it's learning how to navigate their ADHD. Treatment for getting over the hurdles of one's mental health issues can seem non-existent. However, our friends at National Center of Counseling Services and Training, their mission is to connect their clients with a therapist that can best assist them with their mental health concerns and provide them with treatment. They're licensed counselors. They will walk alongside you and access whatever fear, trauma, or grief that you face. After all, knowing the source of your illness, whether it is a chronic illness or acute, it is the first step in developing the tools to combat mental illness. We're blessed to partner up with Dr. Terry Lynn Kim. She was a recent guest on our podcast, Glow Sessions, and we're just really excited to just give you guys resources for those of you that may be going through something tough and you just don't know who to turn to, who to talk to. Go to nationalcentercst.com. Be sure in the contact form to let them know that you heard about them through this podcast. You know, that Dr. Terry Lynn was such a great guest. We had her on twice. And I will say, in the area of, you know, walking people through stuff, my wife and I have been blessed, you know, to not just the position and titles aside, whether you can say pastor, leader, whatever it may be. One of the things we're blessed to say that is, you know, God put some great people around us and some great people in front of us. And just being able to minister to people and pray with and pray for and help people walk through some tough things in their life. And we're believing that this podcast, even in this podcast, even though a lot of the majority of our audience are, you know, they're not, you know, they don't go to church or they're not Christian or whatever, but it really is about reaching out to people and meeting people where they're at, right? And so, you know, we were talking this entire time talking about, I know we talk about rivers and lakes and the oceans and the uncertainties, all of that. But if I was to give a word of encouragement in the area of, you know, living life, a lot of us, you know, whether you're born in the Midwest or if you're born near the ocean like me, the common thread of everything we talked about is that no matter where you're at, there's either an ocean, there's a river, there's a lake, there's a stream, there's something that brings life to where you're at. You know, a lot of people ask me, did you ever get like island fever? I think island fever is something that a lot of people experience that is tied to, and this is my opinion, to not being content with what you've been given. So one of the things I find a lot of people that, and I know the title is Van Down by the River, which is ironic. There's a lot of people every summer. They'll get in their RVs and they just go. Right? I don't know where they go, but they just go. They go somewhere. Like they go someplace other than here. And it's like, I'm thinking, like, where do you go? I guess you go to find something better. I'm hoping. So when people ask me that question, like, have you ever gotten island fever? I'm like, no, I never have. And I don't even know what that means. I guess that means, I think if I was to define island fever, that's like you feel like you're stuck in a place that you're not happy in. That's what I would interpret it as. Brother, if you ever met me and my family in Hawaii, like you'd see them, man, we've been blessed beyond measure, bro, to have all of this, right? The ocean is our backyard. There is no other states. We're it. Like, that's it, right? So I never experienced that. And the ironic thing is, now that we're in Oregon, man, you miss it a lot, right? Because you're like, man, I can imagine. Now, for us, this is temporary. This is not a full-time thing, right? So, but still, man, we miss it. We miss that, the ocean aroma. We miss the calmingness, that calming sound of the ocean waves. Sometimes I'll have Google Play waves when I'm sleeping. My wife doesn't like it. She doesn't like it. She doesn't want to be reminded of what, because our house, like every night you hear the waves. You hear the waves crashing, like every night. And so we never had that. And then I look at people here, and I would say 9 times out of 10, people that travel in RVs, and I'm not speaking for everybody, but a lot of them I find and I see that they, even though they like traveling, a lot of them end up around lakes and rivers. It's such an ironic thing. And then they ask me the question, don't you ever feel like you have island? No, because the water is where it's at. Even the tropical island and all that. You know what I mean? So, sorry, I got a spam comment on Twitch. But, so we never experienced that. We never, now if you're not from Hawaii, you definitely probably would feel that because you feel like I got to go someplace to go find something better. Like this is cool. I've had the ocean and the beach and the tropical weather. This is nice, but I got to go find. And if I was to analyze that, there's this mindset here. I think they call them snowbirds. So people that live here, there's a few people that they go down south every winter because they don't want to be in the winter. So they go down south. And then they come back up during the summer. So they're always going to find something better than where they're at. And if I was to give a word of encouragement for anybody, and this is where I'm going to land this, is we're always trying to find something better. But one of the things I've been studying, I've been reading today was where God is, that's where it's at. So I know that sounds kind of vague, but wherever God is, one of the things I over the years in there studying scripture is heaven? Is heaven a place? Is heaven like, is that where we're going? And a lot of times in Christian theology and Christian church and even in ministry and even people that have these social media spaces, whether it's on Twitter, on X, or even these discussions on different platforms, everybody talks about going to heaven. And it's like, the scripture that I read, obviously, paradise and heaven. Jesus talked to that guy on the cross, right? He's like, from this day forward, you'll be with me in paradise. And as a kid, wow, heaven, right? He's like, well, heaven, right? This guy's going to be in heaven. But the powerful part about that scripture is that you will be with me in. So wherever he is, that is where it's at. And so, Revelation talks about a new Jerusalem. Well, where does that Jerusalem land? It doesn't land on heaven. It lands on earth, right? The recreation of it all. And I think, okay, as cool as heaven is, that's not the final place. That's part of the final place is him, right? The final destination is the Lord. It's God. It's not a place. It's him. Being with him in paradise, with him on the new earth, the new Jerusalem in heaven. So if I was to land this on anything, I would land it on Ezekiel 47:9. I'm going to pull it up I want to pull up in King James. I think King James is beautiful. So I'm going to read this for you guys. And it's Ezekiel 47 verse 9. And I think King James I like King James. Even though I don't agree with King James in some of the, here we go. Did I say King James? Yeah, King James verse. So Ezekiel 47 verse 9. Okay. I love the old language. Here we go. So out of Ezekiel 47 verse 9 says, and it shall come to pass that everything that liveth, which moveth, whatsoever the rivers shall come, shall live, and there shall be a very great multitude of fish, because these waters shall come thither. It literally says thither, for they shall be healed, and everything that shall live whither the river cometh. Now let's make it a little bit easier language. So let's do I'll do NIV. Okay. So I like this part. So swarms of living creatures will live wherever the river flows. There will be large numbers of fish, because this water flows there, and check this out, and makes the salt water fresh. So where the river flows, everything shall live. Anybody that's been following me on social media, like I used to do like these fishing videos, or like I would eat this, like we call opihi, which is limpets. And I used to love just picking this. I would pick it fresh. I would eat it live on camera. Well, I found that there's this one place that had these different style of opihi. And it was where the fresh water, where the river, where the stream would flow into the ocean. And this opihi or limpets, they loved like being right near all this fresh water. And a lot of the limu, or the seaweed, and all the things around this area, man, be just teeming with life. And there's so many stories and so many object lessons around this, because typically around brackish water, which is a mixture of salt and fresh, the life is much different there than what you find in the ocean. You find that saltwater fish that migrate up into this freshwater stream, they're able to do so, and they're able to adapt to that. Tilapia is one of them. There's actually some barracuda. Sometimes turtles come in, but the fresh water gives them an avenue to go up this. And we know every year when the salmon from the ocean, they go up and they swim up the rivers to get to the top, just to have babies, and then they die. And when I read this scripture, I'm like, okay, there's something powerful about when rivers flow. You know, even though in the beginning I joked about, you know, being afraid of water. I don't know if that was a joke, but that was truth. But being afraid of fresh water, dirty water. But when we look in the context of scripture, where there's rivers, flowing rivers, wherever it flows, life grows. And I know that famous sketch with Chris Farley where he says, I'm in a man living in a van down by the river. Even though it depicts of a life that's failing, he was in the right place. I think he just didn't know it. Because wherever the river flows, that's where things grow. There's a ton of other scripture, but I think Ezekiel 47:9 is a great place to land. And wherever the water flows, there'll be large numbers of fish and life and things that will. So I'm not sure where you're at today. I'm not sure if you're in a dark place or maybe you're struggling. But I will tell you this. If you are in need of prayer, or maybe you just don't know where to turn to, obviously we have friends that are able to walk you through. Dr. Terry Lane Kim is one of our brand partners. They'd be more than willing to walk you through. We also have I'll put it up on here for anybody that's going to hear or see this. We have a call-in hotline, 1-541-516-0133. That is our podcast hotline. It goes straight to the voicemail. So if you want to leave a 3-minute message, you're more than welcome to. That's 1-541-516-0133. And then my wife and I will go through those. But we just want to be obedient and be available. And I enjoy doing these solo podcasts, although they're not as long as I like them to be. I like to have organic engagement. So we have a couple of guests lined up for the month of June, and we'll make the announcements accordingly. And so, but are you afraid of water? Are you afraid of fresh water like me? Are you afraid of lakes? Well, have no fear, because the Bible says where the rivers flow, things grow. Ezekiel 47:9. I enjoyed this time, family. I hope this all made sense. I'm putting it out there. These are all historical documents, creating historical documents through conversation. So for everybody that joined us live on YouTube, Twitch, Kick and Rumble, X, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, all those other, Amazon Music as well. So thank you. We appreciate you guys. That is it for today. I'm going to jump on social media and see who all was there. So thank you for your time. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. On behalf of my family and myself, thank you for your time, your hearts, super hearts, your data, all that good stuff. But most importantly, thank you for your time above everything else. And we hope that the exchange of your time for this, well, I hope that it was worth it. As I always say, love you guys. God bless you guys. Ohui hope. Aloha and mahalo. Yes, sir. Chew.